Hey, welcome everyone to the next installment of Insurance at 78 RPMs. I'm Connie Germano, Chief Casualty Officer of Dual North America, and I'm joined by my partner in crime and music and insurance expert, John Naus, Chief Property Officer of Dual North America.
Hi, Connie.
Hey, how are you today? We got a good one, huh?
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, so am I. On today's episode, we have Jeff Cohen, Senior Vice President of Zywave, joining us, better known by his three initials, JMC. Jeff joined Zywave in 2021 to lead the carrier and media businesses. He most recently served as president of Advisen. And prior to that, he was 15 years at Bloomberg. What a great trajectory. Prior to that, he graduated from Cornell. Jeff is passionate about serving his community. And when he's not working or volunteering, you can find him jogging around Central Park.
Well, and no doubt jogging to his song choices, which were heavily influenced by a ton of rock and roll. They were great. By the way, when we're finished with the podcast, we'll upload all those songs on our Spotify playlist, Insurance at 78 RPMs, and they will all be good tunes if you're looking for something to listen to run to, or just generally listen to. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, I thought so. Well, good. Well, let's get to it.
Great.
All right. Hey, welcome, Jeff. How are you today?
I'm terrific. Thanks for having me. Nice to see you, Connie and John.
Jeff, yeah, thanks for joining the podcast. Where are you today?
I'm talking to you from 96th Street on the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
Ah, fantastic. How's the weather there today?
Today, it's a little balmy relative to the way it's been absolutely frigid for a few days, but the sun's been peeking out here and there, and it's a beautiful day here in Manhattan.
Awesome. Well, I thought we would just jump in and get started right away. And to that end, why don't we just start it right up, Mariah? Why don't we kick off the first song, which I know anyone who knows rock and roll will know. It's great energy to kick this thing off, right? Highway to Hell, AC/DC, classic rock and roll tune written by Angus Young, Malcolm Young, and of course the now deceased Bon Scott, written in 79. Funnily enough, the Germans love that tune. Spent 45 weeks on the singles chart there. Number 250 of 500 top songs all time, Rolling Stone. So you've picked a good one. And the album was released in the first to make it in the top 100 Billboard chart. And that is the tune that catapulted the band to great success in the U.S. market. The notes suggest that the song itself was written about the grueling tour schedules required by musicians and believed to be inspired by the Canning Highway between Perth Kwinana Freeway to its Port Fremantle, which was the home of Bon Scott. What made you choose that song, Jeff?
I just turned 60, and I find myself listening to music with energy that propels me, as you say, through my daily rounds. And I find myself gravitating to songs like Highway to Hell for a variety of reasons. They're fun to listen to. And now that I've been working in the insurance industry for several years, I find that a lot of these lyrics speak to me, speak to us about the interesting issues confronting the insurance space. And so the lyrics have a different meaning for me today than they did when I was playing them on my record player in my bedroom.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely true. So, just talking to Connie about this, we thought maybe suggesting that your career path was not quite a highway to hell, but would be interested in a little bit of your origin story and how you got to where you are today.
I suppose I grew up in Maryland, just outside Washington D.C. Went to school in upstate New York. I was a biology major in college. I was looking for a way to kind of combine my interests in business and sales and medicine and biology, and moved to New York City to be closer to my girlfriend, who's now my spouse, and was looking for a job in hospital administration as a way to sort of combine all of these interests. And there are a lot of hospitals in New York City. And while I was doing that, I took a temp job at a company called Bloomberg, which at the time probably had about 100 people worldwide. And I worked there as a temp for several months while I interviewed for the job I really wanted, got the job I really wanted, hated every minute of it,
Mm.
and quickly realized that when you're in a job that you don't like, you talk to your friends and the people at jobs that you did like. And the people at Bloomberg were like, you could come back here. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to be a temp for the rest of my life. They're like, no, we'll hire you full time. So that was 15 years. I left that firm in 2003, and Mike became mayor in 2001. After Mike left, I felt like the firm changed a little bit. And I caught up with some other people doing some really interesting things in the commercial insurance space that seems sort of akin to Bloomberg in the financial space. So I joined Advisen in 2003. We sold Advisen in 2020 to Zywave. And I've been now part of Zywave for 4 years, part of the senior leadership team. And in some ways, this is really still my second job as an adult. So that's the fast path. Not a highway to hell, absolutely not. But certainly,
And not quite a long and winding road, too, as Paul and Connie.
I love being a component of the insurance space. I think insurance is a fascinating industry, and I'm only disappointed with the fact that more people don't choose it as a first choice. They sort of end up here.
It's very interesting, kind of the fact that you've only had 2 jobs, because so many of us have had, oh, more than that. Maybe now this is a little bit different, but I've certainly had more than 2 jobs. When you think about what you found fascinating about our business, could you describe it in a few words?
I'll try. Connie, I think that we have to remember that no business can function without insurance, certainly. Um, and insurance is much more than just a promise. Insurance is the ability to restore, repair, replace, what have you. Um, the idea that this industry is the backstop for so many other dreams and aspirations and mission statements. This is the industry that protects and serves. And I would suggest, now that I've been doing this for a little while, same as you, that this is an industry that actually is trying to make the world a better, safer place. Part of it is we don't want to have to pay that claim, but in the process of helping you avoid that claim, the insurance industry is making you a better risk, lowering your exposure.
How would you say Zywave fits in that equation for you?
Um, Listen, 4 years of Zywave so far has taught me quite a bit. What we were doing at Advisen was geared around specific proprietary data sets, and we were mining loss events to help power predictive models and help brokers position coverage recommendations and so on. Zywave has sort of enabled us to take that to another level in terms of more scope, more resources, getting things to be more granular, and just an awful lot more today than what we had then. So we couldn't scale at Advise, and we can scale at Zywave. But Zywave's offerings are really around, if you are an insurance broker or agent, how do we help you do your job more effectively, more efficiently? How do we help increase your performance? And that can be with a variety of tool sets. If you are a carrier, our emphasis is really on helping you choose risks that are commensurate with your appetite, that risk selection process. We're very into connectivity and distribution. How can we get you more flow, more submissions? And then the last component of this is all around risk management. How do we help you make your insureds, your policyholders safer, better risks, and ultimately lower their incidence of claims, which makes you happy and keeps you um, in a position where you can offer this risk mitigation solution to your next future policyholder. Um, you know, Given what's going on in the casualty markets today, especially, um, Con, and you live and die by this, every hour, I would imagine. It's a volatile world out there, but we can't allow the insurance companies not to be profitable. Then they won't be able to serve that next policyholder. And so there's this very interesting sort of give and take. I don't know, seesaw balance, fulcrum thing that's going on, which is, how do you help insurance companies do what they need to do so they can be there to backstop the next company that needs to cover it? And Zywave's sort of in the middle of all of that.
Good. I like that. Are we ready to move on, John?
Sure.
All right. So the next song that we chose for you out of your list, of your carefully curated list, Where Have All the Good Times Gone? So Mariah, can you play this for us?
All my life I never stopped to worry about a thing. Open up and shout it out.
Good energy.
Wondering if I've done it wrong. Will this depression last for long? Won't you tell me where have all the good times gone? Where have all the good times gone? Where have all the good times gone?
Love that. I always have so much fun listening to the lists that the guests send over, and this was a great one. And I had forgotten that it was written by Ray Davies and first recorded by the Kinks. Completely forgot that. As far back as 1965, Van Halen actually did a lot of Kinks covers, and in fact, when they needed a creative break at one point, I can't remember which album it was, but there were a fair amount of covers on that album, and that was Van Halen taking a break in their creative activity. And the first Van Halen single was a Kinks cover called "You Really Got Me." So clearly, I know why Van Halen chose the Kinks. They were good songs. Why did you choose this song?
Um, Van Halen was the first band that I went to see live at the Capitol Center in concert when I was growing up. And there will always be that, and like many of your guests, I imagine, those early music interactions, and interaction is not the right word, but, experiences maybe, really sort of shape the music that you love and listen to forever. But today I listen to it with a little bit of a different perspective. And, you guys are going to, grimace when I say this, but, in I'll work it in this way, right? Like, we go to college and, plagiarism is wrong. You've got to do your own work. You've got to be creative, and, you know, everything has to be original. And then you get out in the real world and it's like, well, wait a minute. Before I send this letter to this customer, has anyone written something that's similar that I could like key off of or use as a base or a foundation? And there's an awful lot of what I would call innovation in the insurance business which is keying off of what somebody else did before and making it better. And I'm not talking about like adding a semicolon into a form. I'm talking about like, here's a coverage angle that we didn't quite get. And I've started to listen to covers in sort of that fashion. Like it's this idea of we took something that was really good. The Kinks version is really good, especially for the time that they did it. And we made it way better. And so for me, I think about these things in a parallel sense of like the way the insurance industry is innovating, right? Like we're taking what those guys did across the street and now we're adopting it and migrating it and adjusting it so that it could accommodate this particular exposure pattern. It takes what they did, it's good, and goes one up, makes it better.
I always try to anticipate what the person's going to say, right? And that is not what I thought, but I can completely see where you're thinking, right? We joke always that the sincerest form of flattery is imitation, right? And there's a lot of imitation that goes on, but what we often do is make it better, make it that much better, make it their own. I love that analogy.
In the insurance business, it's necessary that this operation happens, right? Because nobody wants to be on some unique risk by themselves. The carriers don't want that. The carriers actually want others to join in. I'll take a piece of the risk. I'll take a layer. I'll attach over here. That makes the whole thing way more stable and secure. And for me, that means that there has to be a certain amount of, we'll call it envious copying. I'm not quite sure, but no matter what, I have to imagine that whatever time frame we're talking with Van Halen in the early 1980s, I don't know, they were sitting around going, could we do this better? I don't think the goal was, we come up with a version that's not as good as theirs. Nobody would do that. They're like, how about this? This really rocks. Let's go this way. Or at least that in my head, that's what I imagine the conversation was like.
Well, John knows this because I've told him that I was in a band when I was in college, and all we ever did was try to sound like the original. We weren't trying to be any creative. Well, I'm curious. So if you think about imitation being the sincerest form of flattery, did you have someone in your early career or even now where you look at that person and they may have shaped the person you are today?
No, I think that, all of us at this sort of stage in our careers have been blessed by interactions with a number of very significant people. And I think as I got older, the trick became to recognize when you're being exposed to, we'll call, meaningful interactive experiences, and also recognize when you're being exposed to situations that you haven't been in before, that you're being pushed to do, or situations where you're working with somebody that you're like, we're not really gelling. And what I mean by that is, look, the fact of the matter is, I never reported directly to somebody like Mike Bloomberg, but I reported to somebody who reported to him, and I was certainly exposed to him. And there's a level of genius, and then there's a level of Mike Bloomberg genius that sort of transcends all of that. But it still comes back to some basic qualities, which you see over and over in pretty successful people in this industry and others. Yes, you have to be super intelligent. And yes, you have to have a certain amount of the right timing to come along and do this thing that you're doing. And I also think, coupled with those two facets is an attribute of pure stamina. You have to work harder. And you have to be engaged in what you're doing. And whether it's, Mike Bloomberg or Tom Ruggieri or any of these other CEOs that I've been, fortunate enough to work with, you see some of those attributes sort of over and over and over again.
Good. I like that.
Yeah, well said. All right, well, let's move on to the next tune. We're going to go right back to where we were. It is a song by our favorite, or one of Jeff's favorite bands, AC/DC. All right, you want to play this one, and then we'll get into that a little bit too? So obviously a solid ACD song. Who Made Who? It's not one of their more famous ones, of course. Back in Black, etc. The one Hell's Bells, all that. But any particular reason why that ACDC tune?
Yeah, I picked a couple of tunes on my list, which were not what I would call the top echelon of notoriety and popularity, but they're tunes that I really enjoy. Solid beat, fun lyrics. But if you apply the the lens of insurance to some of these songs, and this one in particular, this is a song that was written specifically for that Stephen King book that in the movie Maximum Overdrive, right? Like so, and that's a story. That's a horror story about machines that sort of take over and start to kill people. And for me, and how much stuff we're doing related to cyber risk and some of these potential perils, I can't help but think about those possibilities when I hear music like this. And so it has a heightened meaning for me. And I know that sounds really geeky to say.
I couldn't agree more. It was written in '86. Brian Johnson had replaced, as we said earlier, Bon Scott, who died. Right, he'd sang on the previous tune, "Highway to Hell." This actual song, surprisingly, reached #1 in Finland. But it is interesting that you raised the point about the movie itself, a 1986 film, as you noted, basically about a comet sort of passing through Earth, or Earth passing through a rogue comet's tail, which then makes previously inanimate objects animate. And of
Right.
course, they, to your point, kill people. And I have to laugh. It's 1986, so it is what it is. But there is a scene in there where a soda machine at a baseball game, at a little league game, kills a manager or a coach with, pitching the soda cans at him. I mean, it's so campy. It's hilarious to make me think about it. It's probably a movie I need to go back and watch again. But curious, to your point about that. I mean, technology is a big piece of the insurance industry, and while I don't think we're going to end up the way the movie ended up with respect to that, any sort of comment about technology and so potentially maybe even some misconceptions about technology and the way it interacts in the insurance space?
Yeah, we could spend a lot of time on this topic, John. I think
Sure.
you know, there's a familiar refrain that the insurance industry is woefully behind technology wise, but you're seeing exceptional areas of speed and catch up around things like distribution, around things like connectivity and submission portals and so on, comparative raters and the like. Um, I would suggest that uh, technology will continue this path of, uptick after uptick after uptick. And it's incumbent upon people to recognize like what is the unique additional component that people are adding in order to make something complete. And that's sort of a very abstract notion that I'm laying on the table here. But what I'm suggesting ultimately is that the insurance industry in particular will continue to embrace technology more and more. It because it's what makes things scalable. And at the same time, you're looking for that whole kind of reduction in the classic, how many times do I have to rekey, a name and an address into a system in order to do it here? You're going to see more um, components get coupled together, in a more efficient fashion. I would argue that AI is going to take us, at Zywave, we're certainly paying attention to ways that we can make sort of the steps more contiguous. Where we're taking Zywave is in an area where we're utilizing all sorts of technology and AI to get to a level where we can bridge those gaps in a more cleaner way.
Do you think the data is coming alongside nicely the technology? Uh,
Um,
incremental, getting better at that. Is it? How do you see that?
Um, I think it's perhaps a parallel track of we're making progress, but we have miles and miles to go. Um, let's just talk about a claims database, right? Something that doesn't sound super complex. Here we are, we're an insurance carrier. We pay claims and we write checks. And for every check that we send out, what data is associated with it? Start with the policyholder and extrapolate out to the industry and so on and like things and so on. This is very difficult to do. And now that we've been running a data business for decades, yeah, it's very hard to recreate what we've done. We have over 1 million records of what we call low frequency, high severity loss events. And our customers use these things for pricing and reserving and all sorts of specialty applications. It's an effort to get there, and it's an even bigger effort to maintain it and keep it updated. And it's just one part of the picture. Ultimately, you need to know as much as you can about the applicant, the policyholder, the submission request, or what have you. Um, Broker supplies some information along with that. You need industry information. You need information, internally about your own circumstances and your own book. It's a lot to configure, and it's all done through different types of databases held to different structures and different mandates. And that is perhaps the holy grail of the whole thing. If we can get the raw material to be synchronized, I think you'd see a lot of very interesting risk application. There are a lot of questions being put back to the policyholders along the lines of, help me to better understand your business.
We had another guest a couple of podcasts ago, and he has a long history on the work comp side. And I know he's written a number of papers in, can we just get the data tagged in the same way in every company? That's just the work comp. And it was just too big of an ask. And I see it on the underwriting side, right? We get submissions in with loss data, and it's not always intuitive as to why they've chosen the codes they have. So it's an interesting process.
100%, Connie. It's all different. It needs to be standardized, and I imagine we're migrating down a path, but it's a long, arduous path to get
Do
there.
you think anyone's talking about it? I don't hear it.
You don't hear it. I mean, I think that, there are certain data standards that, core data standards or whatever it might be. I think ultimately this is something where the marketplace will adopt a convention based on some sort of critical mass. But I don't know what the precursor is to that.
Fair point.
Mariah, I'm just going to have you start this up because I think everybody will recognize Jeff's song.
Gotta know tonight. If you're alone tonight, can't stop this feeling. Can't stop this vibe. Oh, get hysterical, hysteria. What can you feel? Do you believe it? Such a magical mysteria. When you get that feeling, better start believing. 'Cause it's a miracle.
Great tune.
So, Hysteria, as I told you earlier, these songs all would fit on my top 100 without a doubt, and Hysteria is right there. I saw Def Leppard 2 years ago, and they were as good as they ever were. I saw them with Motley Crue, and they were fantastic.
Connie, where did you see him?
In Las Vegas at
Okay.
what is that? Wherever the Raiders play, and I can't remember the stadium.
Oh yeah.
But it was great, and they played this song, of course. So it's a title track not the first of the title tracks that you've chosen. And this one was released by Def Leppard in 1987, and it was their I didn't know this, it was their first top 10 hit on the Billboard Hot 100, peaking at number 10, so they just squeaked in there. And it was also the first album, and I remember anxiously awaiting this album because it was the first album after the accident that Rick Allen, the drummer, had, where he ended up losing his arm, which was in 1984. So it took them 3 years to put an album together. And being a big metalhead that I am, I was eagerly awaiting this, though that song isn't very metal-y. Rick Allen is believed to have titled the song, alluding to the car accident and the amputation of his arm and the worldwide hysteria about it all. And I have to say, in my little corner of the world growing up in Nevada, we couldn't wait to hear how he was recovering. So for you, why this song?
Um, this song, first of all, I can listen to this song, you know, the way people talk about, if there's a certain movie playing late at night on, you'll watch it over and over again. Like this is that song for me. This song could be playing at any time in any context, and I will pay attention and listen to it again. Um, this song also, because of the Rick Allen, I'm the drummer in this giant band, and I have a car accident and I lose my arm, which I think we could all agree is an important component uh, to your skill set. Um, Tragic, but this is for me is all about overcoming adversity,
Yeah.
and so for me, every time I hear it, it's this sort of uplifting idea that um, you can overcome a great tragedy and the next iteration can be even better. Um, and look, I could even go further now in my little insurance space, and I could tell you that, um, the essence to running a book of business that is sustainable is being able to manage through the crises and being able to take some serious lumps perhaps and power through it and not have to, cut and run and spit everything into runoff and leave. This is all about sustainability in my mind. And I think these guys, the fact that they're still touring and you're out there watching them,
And he's
uh,
still the drummer. He's
and
still the
Rick
drummer.
Allen is still the drummer and Joe Elliott is still the singer. Like, it's great. Great for those guys. I think it's a tremendous statement. It almost gets better with age in some sort of odd way.
To your point, it would be so easy to cut and run if you lost your arm and you were a drummer. You would just think, "Oh, woe is me," but no, he just thought, "We'll just do it a little differently." And to your point, it turned out as good or better than previously. It's a hell of a story for sure.
I think it's an incredible, again, not close to it, but from the cheap seats, my view is that this is an incredible story of human perseverance and sort of ingenuity, right? Like the idea that you're at the top of your game with Pyromania in what, 1983?
Yep. Yep.
When you could hang it up and be perfectly set for the rest of your life, but no, you're going to try to eclipse that mark.
Yep.
Uh, and I think about you know, those undertones when I'm listening to the song all the time.
That's great. Well, I was going to go a different direction with this, but I'm going to try to stay with this theme because I really like this concept that you brought up of perseverance. Um, have you had a time in your career where you've had to overcome some adversity? I mean, other than the job that you really thought you wanted and then didn't want, that was a good one, I think. Anything else come to mind?
Um, sure, and I'm happy to go there. The the job stuff, I would argue, particularly if you're a glass is half full type of individual, for me, I would put myself closer to that. The glass is overflowing. So I don't see the job stuff as setbacks. Perhaps I didn't really want that, but now the question is, what did I learn from it, and what can I take away and apply it to the next experience? You know, uh, in the context of going through life, I will share with you that, there are two setbacks that occurred in my life as an adult. One was when my wife had a rather rare uterine cancer, and that period of time from diagnosis to where we are today, which is, she's perfectly fine. She has to do a blood test once a quarter to make sure that her issue is still in remission. But the fact is, you know, fully functional, 100% participating in everything, not skipping a beat. But that year and a half was difficult. It was new. And we were selling our business at the same time, which just complicated some things. Um, and I would tell you that the other instance was a situation with our kids who are, we have twins, they're 29. They're both deaf. And the discovery that your children are not perfect in every way was off-putting. Having said that, they're beautiful, amazingly super productive. They're tax-paying, voting members of society, contributing in every way, and we're very proud of them. Ridiculously accomplished, and I couldn't be prouder. But it's that instance of learning of adversity. I imagine it's the same thing that Rick Allen and his parents were experiencing, car accident and immediate aftermath, like, wow, what are we going to do? And then you gather your resources and you ask some questions and you consult all of the people who have helped you and been there through life, and you leverage your help desk and you get on with it. And, and then I think the ultimate, so I don't think of these things as setbacks. I think of them almost as learning situations. But what you really get out of it is the ability to then pay it forward in some way, which is, these occurrences are not unique to us. They happen and things like them happen. So, you know, I think there's nothing better than helping another individual or another family that's experiencing some of these things to say, we were there too. And this is how we dealt with it. And this is the outcome. And these are the adjustments that we had to make in order to get to here. And I think that actually becomes tremendously rewarding.
Is that how you became involved with the Center for Hearing and Communication?
100%.
I wondered
100%.
about that. Okay.
So this is a nonprofit agency, based in Lower Manhattan, and I was board president for a number of years. Been on the board for 20 plus years. This is an agency that helps anybody with a hearing impairment or a challenge operate in mainstream, and from newly born to seniors, the whole spectrum. And yes, that is how our children learn to speak. Remember, speech is repetition. Nobody's born with an accent. You learn an accent from the people who are talking around you. It's like racism. Nobody's born a racist. You learn to be a racist. Um, Speech is the same thing. And our children learn to hear and speak at this organization. And, I think people would be hard pressed to figure out that they have this issue as adults because they're so proficient. They've learned to compensate. I speak to my wife sometimes like the way a catcher has to talk to a pitcher on the mound because they read lips too well, which is frustrating as a parent. But having said that, they're remarkable in every way. And yeah. And the other side of it is, for the industry, I'm on the board of the Spencer Educational Foundation, which is an organization that's all about propelling risk management talent. So this is scholarships and internships and grants. We raise money from the insurance industry to help students, mostly undergrads, but also grads, become more as they pursue a career in insurance. So, as we all get older and we all look at like, where's the talent going to come from? That's the mission of Spencer. And so those are really the two extracurriculars that I put a lot of calories into.
Really Really great stuff, Jeff. Thanks for sharing that. And I can see why that tune resonates with you given your life experience. I mean, there's no reason not to make that connection. It's really something. And it's really great just to see generally how people pick themselves up and dust themselves off after, something that may not be perfect and continue to thrive. And it's really, it's extraordinary to hear those stories and very, very uplifting. It's great. So let's go to the next song. Just an absolute phenomenal tune. Everyone will know it. Mariah, take it away, and then we'll talk about it.
Oh, let the sun beat down upon my face, stars to fill my dreams. I'm a traveler of all time.
So, of course, one of, if not the best rock band of all time, Led Zeppelin, Kashmir, right? Released in 1975. It took nearly 3 years to write it. And boy, was it worth the wait. An absolute magnum opus, nearly 8 minutes long, or more than 8 minutes long, written by Robert Plant, Jimmy Page, John Bonham. A funny side note, of course, is that John Paul Jones, who was always late to the recordings, didn't actually get credit for the words and for writing the song, and maybe he regrets that. But if you're a part of Led Zeppelin, what is there to regret in life, really? I mean, you basically won, right? And of course, it to no one's shock, it is in the top 50 rock songs of all time, coming in at number 20. So I know why I would choose it. Wonder why you chose it.
Listen, Led Zeppelin, it's almost beyond compare when you think about, any of the rock bands, we could lift out. So, but the music speaks to me personally, around this notion of um, how a group of individuals coalesce as a unit. Because I think all of us would sort of agree that without the classic four component members of Led Zeppelin, it wouldn't be the same. They have a thing. They have a quality. There's a there's a magic between them. And I'm listening to this music, sort of on two levels. One is just that basic, like I can listen to Led Zeppelin anytime. I can go running. I can do almost any activity, and it can be in the background, and I'm just gently doing my thing. But I think there's also a showcase of like great teams are individuals that work as a unit rather than a couple of star performers and everybody else is out there supporting them. And I think, I would go so far as to tell you, John, that um, it's more fun to work with people who are completely engaged in what they're doing and are riffing off of you, kind of thing, like as you're doing it. But where it really works is where it's smooth. And for me, Kashmir, many of the Led Zeppelin tracks are indicative of this like aspirational smoothness. I don't know. I can't describe it any differently, I suppose.
No, it is extraordinary to think about, and you wonder, whether there was that friction. Sometimes greatness comes from friction, but I think more often than not, to your point, it comes from cooperation and a real sense of, hey, we're in this together. And clearly, this band and the tunes that they created are just, it just really is there's a special place in music for this band and what they achieved, the four of them, and just how great it was. It's really, it's a great choice. And it's our first Led Zeppelin tune in our entire podcast. So you'll forever be known for Zeppelin first, which is exciting. So, just to riff a little bit then on your team concept, how does that work at Zywave? I mean, I hear how it works for you and your own life philosophy. How does it work at Zywave?
Well, I guess I would respond by telling you that um, when I worked at Bloomberg, my own experience was that Mike had a vision where he wanted to go, and the rest of us were executing on that vision. And yet, when I left Bloomberg, the rest of the world doesn't really operate that way. The rest of the world is a little bit more vague and a little bit more fuzzy. Um, and at Advisen, it quickly became apparent that the things that are good that get accomplished got accomplished because a whole bunch of us pulled together to make that goodness occur. And Zywave is the same idea, just a bigger scale. With almost 1,000 people and people working in all parts of the world, you've got to be very collaborative, and you've got to be able to say, this is what I contribute. This is what I'm good at. This is what you contribute. This is what you're good at. And, the ultimate thing that comes out, whether it's data or software or some sort of portal connectivity connection thing, is the result of many people along the way touching this and shaping it and delivering it. Um, no one person is responsible for almost anything in the business that I've been in for the last 20 some odd years. And I would suggest that the same thing is true on the insurance front. So I think um, that's sort of where I am today. There are some great talents at Zywave, but the real interesting aspect is sort of how the talents coalesce as an operating unit. And when it works, you can the speed just goes. And it's fun to watch. It's fun to be a part of it.
Yeah. I listened to my favorite band growing up, The Police. I listened to Stuart Copeland talk about how he and Andy Summers had ideas for tunes, and they did. But once Sting showed up and he started demonstrating his ability to songwrite, Stuart Copeland just we just threw our hands up. It was his band. That was it, right? He was just better than us. And I get it that they had greatness. They produced some albums, but that's probably a reason why they don't tour. They did the one reunion tour, which I went to see them at Wrigley Field, but I got the impression that Copeland and Summers kind of chafed under that, recognizing all of that, and he was fantastic, and he was the engine that drove it all. But they wish they maybe had a little more part in it. So on the one hand, that greatness can be good, but it can also be a little destructive too. I think I prefer your explanation.
You're reminding me of the scene in Bohemian Rhapsody where, I'm in love with my car.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that song?
Yeah.
Well, it pales in comparison to Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
So, Mariah, why don't you play this one first, and then we can talk about it.
Now if you're feeling kinda low about the dues you've been paying, future's coming much too slow. And you wanna run, but somehow you just keep on staying. Can't decide on which way to go. Yeah, I understand about indecision, but I don't care if I get behind. People living in competition. All I want is to have my peace of mind. Yeah.
Another great choice.
Now you're climbing to the top of the company ladder. Hope it doesn't take too long. Can't you see there come a day when it won't matter? Come the day when you'll be gone. I understand about indecision, and I don't care if I get behind. People living in competition. All I want is to have my peace of mind.
So, Boston, right? clearly groundbreaking in their day. Every single one of your songs really just resonated the moment they hit the airwaves, in my mind, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So Peace of Mind was written by Tom Scholes from Boston, and he wrote the song in 1974 while he was working for Polaroid. And it's said to refer directly to climbing the corporate ladder and Scholes' own need for his peace of mind. He didn't want to strive for promotion, but certainly as of a year ago, this particular song was one of the 3 Boston tracks to garner more than 100 million streams on Spotify. So clearly a very popular song. So why this one?
You know, Boston had to have a song on my list for you. And it could have been More Than a Feeling, but I figured that was like, it was so overplayed. That was the only record I ever bought more than one of. I had to have one here and one there when, close to the mic, you know, record players. The and long time, and they're such they're so they're just great. I'm not sure. Obviously not describing it perfectly. The harmonies, sort of following off of the Beach Boys sort of influence. I think there's, the heavy metal aspect, or, the really well positioned, orchestrated musical output thing that is Led Zeppelin. I think there's a component of that
Right.
in Boston. But for Boston, I felt like the songs were a little bit more narrative, easier to follow. And I think Tom Scholz, and again, I'm not a guitar virtuoso, but my imagination expectation is that, Tom was forging down a path that was completely pioneering with regard, similar to like Eddie Van Halen, like fiddling with equipment and constructing new pieces of electronics to give certain sound output, sort of that taking innovation to a whole nother level, and being sort of unconcerned with the corporate mid-70s. I have to go to work and be the man and get a job and do my thing and climb the corporate ladder. This was sort of like, no, I'm going to chase my dream. Uh, but I love the melodies and I love the harmonies.
Yeah, good stuff. All right. Well, good choice. So, in some of our discussions, you shared that you keep your calendar visible for everyone in the company. And so, in Inside Duel, we referred to this podcast as Jeff is an open book, right? So I think that describes that's a little bit of why I chose that. So everyone in the company can see your calendar. That your key to your ethos is transparency. So can you tell us a little bit of a backstory on why transparency is so important for you?
I'll try. Um, you know, and yes, it's true. Everybody in the company knows, if they care, they can tell from my calendar that I'm having this conversation with the two of you.
Well, they know now for sure.
Uh, you know, for me, transparency is actually the easiest way to communicate. Um, when we were growing up, going back to your comment a moment ago about, lyrics and, understanding, making sure you have the right word and so on. Um, you sort of had to sing along if there weren't liner notes in the album physical jacket. Like you were guessing, comparing with your friends until the internet came along, and then you're like, well, actually, let's look this up and let's see. And this idea of, one-way information, the band singing it to you, versus two-way information, the band singing it to you and you looking at the lyrics. For me is the vestige of transparency, and my work life and my personal life blend. So it's one calendar and everybody can see what I'm doing. And for me, collaboration, all of those things get fostered because that information is readily available.
Well said.
On the
Well said.
floor.
Yep.
I I I I wonder about the person that walks into an environment, particularly an environment that is collaborative. And as we've established during this conversation, so much of insurance is collaborative. But if it's like, look, this is mine and this is yours, for me, that's less collaborative. And I think it's going to be hard to turn out great insurance output and great musical output. You know, things aren't linear. The world is complicated. And so it's like, oh, you have that. Could I use that? And you know that person. Could you get me an in over there? I see that you know that person. Rather than everybody operating in their own silo. I'm opposed to silos. And so one of the ways I counter that is being as transparent as possible in my daily operational activity.
Good.
Yeah. It's a
How
good
many-
philosophy to live by.
Go ahead, John.
No, I was just saying it's a good philosophy to live by. Connecting those dots. It's an important part of our process for sure.
As you can see, John and I collaborate a lot. And he's an easy collaborator, I have to say. So I can't let you go without asking you about your eyeglasses and your legendary eyeglass collection.
I have reached a physical age where my eyes are not really changing. And at the same time, the optical providers have figured out a way to do things in a more efficient, less costly fashion. So for my very complicated prescription, I can now go to Warby Parker or wherever, and I can get a pair of glasses that would have cost much more previously than they do today, which means I'm always tapping into my HSA every time I go to my annual ophthalmology exam. And it's like, sure, why not? Let's get another pair. And, look, there's an awful lot of this world which is just static and boring, and I'm opposed to that. I'm big into differentiation at every opportunity, and I don't mind wearing glasses. I find that it's an accessory, perhaps, and perhaps I have overindulged, but yes. So I love rotating and changing, and yeah, I travel with multiple pairs, and all of my colleagues make fun of me when I show up at different meetings wearing different eyeglasses.
Oh, I think you're full of style. I keep doing it, Jeff. Keep doing it. They look great.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah, and wanted to thank you for your time today. It's great. Great conversation. We both know time is valuable, and we're glad you were able to spend some of your time with us.
Oh, thank you. And I always enjoy talking about these themes. I haven't done it within a musical context. So you definitely pushed me to think about things from a different perspective as well.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jeff.